The vast expanse of space stretched out before the massive alien warship. Stars twinkled in the distance, cold and uncaring about the conflict that raged across the galaxy. Inside the ship, General Zaxthor stood tall, his four arms crossed over his chest as he gazed out of the viewscreen. His scaly skin shimmered under the harsh light of the bridge, and his yellow eyes narrowed as he thought about the war. For centuries, the Zarkonian Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy with an iron fist. They were proud, strong, and technologically advanced. No one dared to challenge them. But now, a coalition of lesser races had formed, and they were pushing back against Zarkonian rule. It was almost laughable to Zaxthor. How could these weaklings hope to stand against the might of his people? "General," a voice called out, interrupting his thoughts. "We are approaching Outpost Zeta 9. Zaxthor turned, his long tail swishing behind him. "Excellent," he growled. "Prepare for landing." The ship descended through the atmosphere of a small rocky planet. As they broke through the clouds, a sprawling military base came into view. Tall metallic structures rose from the barren landscape, surrounded by force fields and weapon emplacements. This was Outpost Zeta 9, one of the Zarkonian Empire's most important forward bases in this sector. As the ship touched down on the landing pad, Zaxthor straightened his uniform. He was here to inspect the troops and boost morale. The war wasn't going as well as he would like, but he would never admit that to his soldiers. They needed to believe in their superiority, just as he did. Flanked by his guards, Zaxthor strode down the ramp of his ship. A group of officers waited to greet him, all standing at rigid attention. Their exoskeletons gleamed in the planet's harsh sunlight, and their mandibles clicked nervously as the general approached. "Welcome to Outpost Zeta 9, General Zaxthor," the base commander said, bowing low. "We are honored by your presence." Zaxthor nodded curtly. "I'm sure you are. Show me your troops, Commander. I want to see if they're as soft as the reports suggest." The commander's antennae twitched in alarm, but he quickly composed himself. "Of course, General. Right this way." As they walked through the base, Zaxthor observed everything with a critical eye. The soldiers they passed snapped to attention, their multiple limbs rigid and their compound eyes fixed straight ahead. But Zaxthor could sense their fear, their uncertainty. It disgusted him. They reached a large training ground where hundreds of Zarkonian soldiers were engaged in combat drills. The air was filled with the sound of energy weapons firing and the clang of metal on metal. Zaxthor watched for a few moments, his frown deepening. "Is this the best you have to offer?" He snarled at the commander. "They move like slugs. The enemy would tear through them like paper." The commander stammered, trying to find words to placate the angry general. But Zaxthor was no longer listening. His attention had been caught by something else, a small dot in the sky, growing larger by the second. "What is that?" he demanded, pointing with one of his upper arms. The commander squinted up at the sky. I'm not sure, General. We're not expecting any ships." As they watched, the dot resolved itself into a small spacecraft. It was unlike anything Zaxthor had ever seen before. It didn't have the sleek lines of Zarkonian ships, nor the bulky appearance of their known enemies. This ship was different. The strange craft descended rapidly, landing on an empty pad not far from where Zaxthor stood. The general's guards moved to surround him, weapons at the ready. But Zaxthor waved them back. He was curious about this unexpected arrival. A hatch on the side of the ship hissed open, releasing a cloud of steam. As the mist cleared, a figure emerged. Zaxthor's eyes widened in surprise, then narrowed in contempt. The being that stepped out of the ship was small, pitifully so. It stood on two legs, had only two arms, and its skin looked soft and vulnerable. It wore some kind of protective suit, but even that looked flimsy to Zaxthor's eyes. "What manner of creature is this?" Zaxthor asked, his voice dripping with disdain. The commander consulted a datapad. "According to our records, General, this appears to be a human." Zaxthor threw back his head and laughed, a harsh, grating sound that echoed across the training ground. A human. Here. Oh, this should be entertaining. Little did General Zaxthor know. His encounter with this seemingly weak human was about to change everything he thought he knew about warfare and the balance of power in the galaxy. The humans stood motionless at the foot of their strange spacecraft. General Zaxthor's laughter died away, replaced by a tense silence. The Zarkonian soldiers shifted uneasily, their multiple limbs twitching with nervous energy. None of them had ever seen a human up close before. Zaxthor's curiosity got the better of him. He strode forward, his long legs carrying him swiftly across the landing pad. As he approached, he could see the human more clearly. It was even smaller than he had first thought, barely reaching the middle of his torso. The creature's face was mostly hidden behind a clear visor, but Zaxthor could make out two eyes, a small nose, and a mouth set in a firm line. "Welcome to Outpost Zeta 9, human," Zaxthor said, his voice dripping with mock politeness. "To what do we owe the pleasure of your visit?" The human looked up at him, seemingly unimpressed by the general's towering height or intimidating appearance. When it spoke, its voice was calm and steady. "I'm here as a representative of the United Earth government," the human said. "We've come to negotiate a ceasefire." Zaxthor couldn't contain himself. He burst into laughter again, and this time, his soldiers joined in. The sound of their combined mirth echoed across the base. "A ceasefire?" Zaxthor wheezed, trying to catch his breath. "You must be joking. Why would the mighty Zarkonian Empire negotiate with a species as weak as yours?" The human didn't flinch. "Because this war is costly for both sides. We believe there's a better way forward." Zaxthor's amusement turned to anger. How dare this puny creature suggest that the Zarkonians couldn't win this war? He leaned down, bringing his face close to the human's visor. "Listen carefully, human," he growled. "We don't negotiate with inferior species. We conquer them. Your presence here is an insult to me and my soldiers." The human stood its ground, seemingly unaffected by the general's proximity or his threatening tone. This only infuriated Zaxthor more. "Commander," he barked, turning to the nervous Zarkonian officer. "Prepare a combat arena. If this human wants to talk about war, let's show it what real warriors can do." The commander hesitated. "But General, the human is an official representative. Attacking it could be seen as an act of war." Zaxthor's eyes narrowed dangerously. "Are you questioning my orders, Commander?" The officer's antennae drooped in submission. "No, General. I'll have the arena prepared at once." As the commander scurried away, Zaxthor turned back to the human. To his surprise, the small creature seemed completely calm, almost as if it had expected this turn of events. "You don't seem worried, human," Zaxthor said, his voice a low rumble. "Don't you realize what's about to happen?" The human tilted its head slightly. "I understand perfectly, General. You're going to challenge me to a fight to prove the superiority of your species. It's a predictable response from someone who feels threatened." Zaxthor's four fists clenched in rage. "Threatened? By you? You're nothing but a weak, soft creature. I could crush you with one hand." "Perhaps," the human replied calmly. "But strength isn't everything in a fight, or in a war." The general's rage reached a boiling point. He reached out with one of his massive hands, intending to grab the human and show it just how easily he could crush it. But to his shock, his hand closed on empty air. The human had moved, faster than his eyes could follow, and was now standing a few feet away. Zaxthor blinked in surprise. How had the human moved so quickly? He shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. It must have been a trick of the light. "Enough talk," he snarled. "We'll settle this in the arena. I'll show you, and all your pathetic species, what true power looks like." The human nodded. "As you wish, General. Lead the way." As they walked towards the combat arena, word spread quickly through the base. Soldiers rushed to find good viewing spots, eager to see their general put this presumptuous human in its place. Bets were placed, jokes were made, and the atmosphere became electric with anticipation. Little did they know, they were about to witness a fight that would change the course of the war and shake the very foundations of the Zarkonian Empire. The humans' calm demeanor hid capabilities that none of them could have imagined. And General Zaxthor, in his arrogance, was walking straight into a trap of his own making. As they reached the arena, Zaxthor turned to the human one last time. "Any last words before I humiliate you in front of my entire base?" The human's reply was simple, but it sent an unexpected chill down Zaxthor's spine. "Just 3 words, General. Don't blink first." The combat arena was a large circular space, surrounded by high walls. Hundreds of Zarkonian soldiers had gathered to watch, their excited chatter filling the air. They perched on the walls, their multiple limbs allowing them to cling easily to the vertical surfaces. The atmosphere was electric with anticipation. General Zaxthor strode into the center of the arena, his massive form casting a long shadow in the harsh artificial light. He turned to face the entrance, waiting for the human to appear. When the small figure finally walked in, a hush fell over the crowd. The human looked even smaller in the vast arena. It had removed its spacesuit, revealing the simple, form-fitting outfit underneath. Without the bulky suit, the human's physique was clearly visible, lean and seemingly fragile compared to the muscular Zarkonians. Zaxthor's lips curled into a sneer. "Look at this pitiful creature," he called out, his voice booming across the arena. "This is what the humans send to negotiate with us. A weak, soft thing that could be crushed by a hatchling." Laughter erupted from the crowd. The Zarkonian soldiers stamped their feet and clacked their mandibles in amusement. The human, however, remained silent and still, watching Zaxthor with an unreadable expression. Encouraged by his troops' reaction, Zaxthor continued his mockery. He circled the human, gesturing with his 4 arms. "Where are your extra limbs, human? How do you expect to fight with only 2 arms? And look at this soft skin, no exoskeleton to protect you. It's a wonder your species has survived this long." More laughter followed. Some of the soldiers were doubled over, their alien features contorted in mirth. The human's calm demeanor seemed to only fuel Zaxthor's desire to humiliate it further. "Perhaps we should give it some armor," Zaxthor suggested, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Or maybe a weapon. Surely it can't fight with those tiny hands." He reached out suddenly, grabbing the human's arm with one of his massive hands. "Feel how fragile it is," he called to the crowd, "like a twig ready to snap." But as his fingers closed around the human's arm, something unexpected happened. Instead of the soft, yielding flesh he expected, Zaxthor felt solid muscle. The human's arm was like steel cable beneath his grip. Surprised, Zaxthor tried to squeeze harder, but the human didn't flinch. It didn't even seem to notice the pressure. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty passed across the general's face. The human spoke then, its voice carrying clearly despite the noise of the crowd. "Are you done playing, General? Or would you like to continue embarrassing yourself?" The arena fell silent. The Zarkonian soldiers looked at each other in confusion. Had they heard correctly? Did this tiny creature just insult their mighty general? Zaxthor's face contorted with rage. He released the human's arm and stepped back. "You dare mock me?" he roared. "I will tear you apart with my bare hands." The human's response was calm, almost bored. "You're welcome to try, General. But I warn you, you might not like the outcome." Zaxthor's anger reached a boiling point. He turned to the crowd, raising all 4 of his arms. "You hear that, soldiers? This puny human thinks it can defeat me. Shall we show it the true might of the Zarkonian Empire?" The soldiers roared their approval, the sound deafening in the enclosed space. Zaxthor turned back to the human, his yellow eyes blazing with fury and contempt. "Last chance, human," he growled. "Beg for mercy now, and I might consider letting you leave this planet alive." The human's reply was simple, but it sent a chill through the arena. "I'll give you the same chance, General. Surrender now, and no harm will come to you or your soldiers. Zaxthor's response was a roar of rage. He charged at the human, his massive form bearing down on the small figure like an avalanche. The crowd held its breath, certain they were about to witness the human's destruction. But as Zaxthor's fists came crashing down, something extraordinary happened. The human moved with impossible speed, ducking under the general's arms and stepping to the side. Zaxthor's momentum carried him forward, and he stumbled, nearly falling. The arena was silent, the Zarkonian soldiers watching in disbelief. Their mighty general had missed, a clumsy, amateurish mistake, and the human hadn't even seemed to try. It just stood there, watching Zaxthor with those strange, alien eyes. As Zaxthor regained his balance and turned to face the human again, a new tension filled the air. The mocking laughter was gone, replaced by a growing sense of unease. For the first time, the Zarkonians began to wonder if perhaps they had underestimated this small, strange creature from Earth. The real fight was about to begin, and nobody in the arena could have predicted what was about to unfold. Part 4. The Challenge. The arena was silent as General Zaxthor and the human faced each other. The Zarkonian soldiers watched with wide eyes, their earlier laughter forgotten. Something had changed, and they all felt it. Zaxthor's yellow eyes narrowed as he studied the human. How had this small creature avoided his attack so easily? It must have been luck, he told himself. It wouldn't happen again. Impressive reflexes, human, Zaxthor growled. But dodging won't save you. This is a fight, not a dance. The human tilted its head slightly. You're right, General. This is a fight. Are you ready for one? Zaxthor's mandibles clicked in anger. I've been fighting wars since before your species learned to make fire. I'll show you what a real warrior can do. He charged again, this time more carefully. His forearms lashed out in a series of quick jabs, each aimed to test the human's defenses. To everyone's surprise, the human blocked or dodged each strike with ease. Its movements were fluid, almost graceful, as it weaved between Zaxthor's attacks. The general pressed harder, his blows becoming faster and more powerful. But no matter how quickly he struck, the human was always just out of reach. Zaxthor's frustration grew with each missed hit. Stand still and fight, he roared. The human's voice was calm as it replied, I am fighting, General. You're just not seeing it. Suddenly, the human moved. It was so fast that many of the watching soldiers couldn't follow the motion. One moment, it was in front of Zaxthor. The next, it was behind him. Before the general could turn, he felt a sharp pain in one of his legs. Zaxthor stumbled, nearly falling to one knee. He looked down in disbelief. A small cut had appeared on his leg, right at a joint in his exoskeleton. It wasn't a serious wound, but it was bleeding. The arena erupted in shocked whispers. The mighty general was bleeding. And the human. It now held a small blade in one hand, a blade that gleamed with a drop of Zarkonian blood. First blood to you, human, Zaxthor said, his voice low and dangerous. But it will be your last victory. The human shook its head. This isn't about victory, General. It's about understanding. You could stop this at any time. Zaxthor roared in anger and attacked again. This time, he used all four of his arms in a flurry of strikes. His claws slashed through the air, aiming to tear the human apart. But somehow, the small creature was always just out of reach. As the fight continued, the watching soldiers began to notice something strange. The human wasn't just avoiding Zaxthor's attacks, it was moving the general around the arena. With each dodge and sidestep, the human was positioning itself and Zaxthor in specific ways. Some of the more experienced warriors realized what was happening. The human was controlling the fight, leading Zaxthor exactly where it wanted him to go. But why? The answer came suddenly and shockingly. As Zaxthor lunged forward, the human dropped low and swept its leg out. The general, already off balance from his missed attack, tripped and fell hard. The sound of Zaxthor's massive body hitting the ground echoed through the arena. For a moment, everything was still. Then, before the general could rise, the human was on him. It moved with incredible speed, striking key points on Zaxthor's body. To the amazement of the watching soldiers, Zaxthor's limbs went limp. The human had somehow paralyzed him, using knowledge of Zarkonian physiology that should have been impossible for an outsider to have. The human stood over the fallen general, its small blade held casually in one hand. "Do you yield, General Zaxthor?" it asked calmly. Zaxthor's eyes blazed with fury and disbelief. What are you?" he gasped. The human smiled for the first time since arriving on the planet. "I am a diplomat, General, and a soldier, and a scientist. I am human, and we are more than you ever imagined." It turned to address the stunned Zarkonian soldiers. "Your general is unharmed, just temporarily paralyzed. He'll recover fully in a few minutes. Now, who's ready to discuss that ceasefire?" The arena was silent. The Zarkonians looked at each other, then at their defeated general, then back at the small human who had done the impossible. In that moment, everything they thought they knew about humans, about warfare, about their place in the galaxy, changed. The human had come seeking peace, but in defeating their strongest warrior, it had shown them a new kind of strength. A strength that perhaps the Zarkonian Empire needed to learn. As Zaxthor lay on the ground, slowly regaining feeling in his limbs, he realized that the real challenge was just beginning, and it was one that would test not just his physical strength, but the very foundations of his beliefs and his empire. The arena was silent as General Zaxthor slowly regained control of his limbs. The human stood nearby, watching calmly as the once mighty Zarkonian struggled to his feet. The watching soldiers were frozen, unsure of what to do or how to react to this unprecedented situation. Finally, Zaxthor stood up, swaying slightly, his yellow eyes fixed on the human, filled with a mix of anger, confusion, and something new: respect. What are you really?" Zaxthor asked, his voice hoarse. The human smiled slightly. "As I said, I'm a diplomat from Earth. My name is Alex, but I think what you're really asking is how I was able to defeat you." Zaxthor nodded, still struggling to comprehend what had happened. Alex looked around at the gathered Zarkonians. "What you've just witnessed is the result of centuries of human adaptation and learning. We may look weak to you, but appearances can be deceiving." The human began to pace, addressing not just Zaxthor, but all the watching aliens. "Humans come from a world that tried to kill us at every turn. We evolved to survive in environments ranging from scorching deserts to frozen tundras. We faced predators, diseases, and natural disasters that would have wiped out lesser species." The Zarkonians listened, fascinated despite themselves. "But our greatest strength," Alex continued, "is not our physical abilities. It's our minds. We adapt, we learn, we innovate. When we encountered alien species like yours, we didn't just study your weapons or your tactics. We studied you." Zaxthor's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "That's how you knew where to strike to paralyze me?" Alex nodded. "Exactly. We learned everything we could about Zarkonian physiology, psychology, and culture. We prepared for this encounter in ways you couldn't imagine." The human turned back to Zaxthor. "But we didn't come here to fight. We came to talk. To find a way to end this war before it destroys both our peoples." Zaxthor frowned. "But why? If you're so powerful, why not just conquer us?" Alex's expression turned serious. "Because that's not who we are. Humans have a long, bloody history of war and conquest. We've learned the hard way that victory through force alone is hollow. Real strength comes from understanding, cooperation, and peace." The Zarkonian soldiers murmured among themselves, clearly struggling with these new ideas. "Besides," Alex added with a small smile, "conquering is easy. Building something together, something that benefits everyone, that's the real challenge." and humans love a challenge. Zaxthor was quiet for a long moment, considering the human's words. Finally, he spoke. You've given me much to think about, human Alex. But my people, we've always believed in strength above all else. How can I convince them to consider peace? Alex's smile widened. By showing them true strength, General. The strength to admit when you're wrong. The strength to change. The strength to choose a harder path for the greater good. The human held out a hand to Zaxthor. What do you say, General? Are you strong enough to give peace a chance? The arena was silent as everyone watched, waiting to see what Zaxthor would do. The general looked at the offered hand, then at the small human who had defeated him so thoroughly. In that moment, he saw not just Alex, but the potential of the entire human race, a species that had faced challenges as great as any the Zarkonians had encountered, and had emerged not just stronger, but wiser. Slowly, hesitantly, Zaxthor reached out and took Alex's hand. The simple gesture sent a ripple of shock through the watching soldiers. Their general, the mighty Zaxthor, was shaking hands with the human as an equal. I am, Zaxthor said, his voice firm. For the good of my people, for the future of the Zarkonian Empire, I am willing to talk peace. As the two stood there, hand in hand, human and Zarkonian, the atmosphere in the arena changed. The tension and fear of earlier were replaced by a sense of possibility, of hope. The soldiers began to chatter excitedly among themselves, discussing what this could mean for their future. Alex looked up at Zaxthor, still holding his hand. This is just the beginning, General. We have a lot of work ahead of us. But together, I believe we can build a future that's better than anything either of our species could achieve alone. Zaxthor nodded, a new determination in his eyes. Then let us begin, human Alex. Show us what true strength looks like. And so, in an arena that had been prepared for battle, the first steps toward peace were taken. The revelation of human strength had opened the door, but it was the revelation of human wisdom that would guide them through it, into a new era of interstellar cooperation. The news of General Zaxthor's defeat and the subsequent call for peace talks spread through Outpost Zeta 9 like wildfire. Within hours, the entire base was buzzing with excitement and apprehension. The combat arena, once a place of violence, had been quickly transformed into a makeshift negotiation room. At the center of the room, a large table had been set up. On one side sat General Zaxthor, flanked by his top advisors. Their faces were stern, but there was a new spark of curiosity in their eyes. On the other side sat Alex, the human diplomat, alone but appearing completely at ease. As the negotiations began, it quickly became clear that this was unlike any diplomatic meeting the Zarkonians had ever experienced. Let's start with the basics, Alex said, leaning forward. What does the Zarkonian Empire truly want? Not just in this war, but for your future. Zaxthor frowned, caught off guard by the direct question. We seek to expand our territory, to bring order to the chaotic regions of space, he said. Alex nodded. And why is that important to you? The Zarkonians looked at each other, confused. No one had ever asked them to explain their motivations before. It is our right, one of the advisors said. We are strong, therefore we should rule. Alex smiled. Strength is important, yes. But let me ask you this. What good is ruling a galaxy if you're constantly at war? If your people are always fighting, always in danger? The room fell silent as the Zarkonians considered this. Humans have a saying, Alex continued. It's lonely at the top. Being the strongest doesn't always mean being the happiest or the most secure. Zaxthor leaned forward, intrigued. What are you suggesting, human? I'm suggesting a new approach, Alex said. Instead of conquering, why not lead? Instead of subjects, why not allies? Imagine a galaxy where the Zarkonian Empire is known not for its military might, but for its wisdom, its fairness, its ability to bring different species together. The idea was revolutionary to the Zarkonians, They had always believed that strength was the only path to respect and power. But now, faced with the evidence of human ingenuity and adaptability, they began to see new possibilities. "It won't be easy," Alex warned. "Change never is. But I believe the Zarkonian Empire has the potential to become something truly great, a force for unity and progress in the galaxy." As the negotiations continued, Alex introduced the Zarkonians to concepts they had never considered before. They discussed trade agreements that would benefit both sides, cultural exchange programs to foster understanding, and joint scientific ventures to tackle the mysteries of the universe. The Zarkonian advisors were skeptical at first, but as Alex patiently answered their questions and addressed their concerns, they began to warm to the ideas. Even Zaxthor, who had been the most resistant, found himself nodding along. "But what about our warriors?" one advisor asked. "War is all they know. What will they do in this new peaceful empire?" Alex's eyes lit up. "That's where things get really exciting," they said. "Imagine redirecting all that skill and energy towards exploration. The galaxy is vast and full of dangers. Who better to lead expeditions into unknown space than the brave Zarkonian warriors?" The idea caught fire among the Zarkonians. The thought of facing new challenges, of being the first to set foot on distant worlds, appealed to their adventurous spirit. As the hours passed, the atmosphere in the room changed. The initial tension gave way to excitement and hope. The Zarkonians began to see a future that was brighter and more interesting than endless war. Finally, as the twin suns of the planet began to set, Zaxthor stood up. The room fell silent, all eyes on the imposing general. "Human Alex," he said, his voice solemn, "you have given us much to think about. Your words, your ideas, they challenge everything we thought we knew." But he paused, looking around at his advisors. "I believe they also offer us a path to a greater future than we had imagined." Alex stood as well, meeting Zaxthor's gaze. "And what is your decision, General?" Zaxthor took a deep breath. "We accept your proposal for peace talks. Moreover, we are willing to consider this new vision for the Zarkonian Empire. It will not be easy, and there will be much resistance to overcome. But if humans can adapt and grow as you have shown us, then so can we." A cheer went up from the Zarkonian advisors. Alex smiled, reaching out to shake Zaxthor's hand once more. "This is just the beginning," Alex said, "but it's a great beginning. Together, we can build something truly remarkable." As the room erupted in excited discussion, both human and Zarkonian knew that this day would be remembered as a turning point in galactic history. The day when the mightiest warrior learned that true strength lies not in conquest, but in cooperation. 5 years had passed since the historic meeting on Outpost Zeta 9. The galaxy had changed in ways that few could have imagined. As the Zarkonian flagship Unity sailed through space, General Zaxthor stood on the bridge, gazing out at the stars. Beside him stood Alex, the human diplomat who had become his close friend and advisor. "I still can't believe how much has changed," Zaxthor said, shaking his head in wonder. Alex smiled. "Change isn't always easy, but it can lead to amazing things when embraced." The past 5 years had been a whirlwind of activity. The peace talks that began on Zeta 9 had expanded, bringing more and more species into the fold. The Zarkonian Empire, once feared across the galaxy, had transformed into the Galactic Cooperative Alliance. "Remember how skeptical everyone was at first?" Zaxthor chuckled. "Even I had my doubts. But you took the first step," Alex reminded him. "That's what true leadership is about." The changes hadn't been without challenges. Many Zarkonians, used to the old ways, had resisted at first. But as the benefits of peace and cooperation became clear, most had come around. The warriors who once lived for battle now led expeditions into uncharted space, facing new challenges that tested their skills in exciting ways. "General," a young Zarkonian officer called out, "we're approaching the Nexus station." Zaxthor nodded. "Prepare for docking." As the massive ship approached the space station, both Zaxthor and Alex felt a sense of pride. The Nexus station was a marvel of cooperative engineering, built by multiple species working together. It served as the headquarters for the Galactic Cooperative Alliance and a symbol of what could be achieved through unity. The docking procedure was smooth, a testament to the improved technology that had come from shared knowledge. As Zaxthor and Alex disembarked, they were greeted by a diverse group of representatives from various species. "Welcome, General Zaxthor and Ambassador Alex," a tall, ethereal being said, bowing slightly. "The Council is eager to hear your report on the Outer Rim explorations." As they walked through the station, Zaxthor marveled at the sights around him. Zarkonians mingled freely with humans, and dozens of other species he had once considered enemies or potential conquests. Now, they were all allies, working together towards common goals. In the main council chamber, Zaxthor took his place at the circular table. Looking around, he saw faces that would have been unimaginable in the same room just a few years ago. The fierce Dracon, the logical Vex, the empathic Elori, all were represented here. As the meeting began, Zaxthor listened to reports of scientific breakthroughs, successful diplomatic missions, and exciting discoveries in unexplored regions of space. Each achievement was the result of cooperation between multiple species, each contributing their unique strengths. When it was his turn to speak, Zaxthor stood tall. "Our expedition to the Outer Rim has been a success," he announced. "We've discovered new habitable planets, made first contact with 3 previously unknown species, and mapped several stable wormholes that could revolutionize our transportation networks." The chamber erupted in excited chatter. Alex caught Zaxthor's eye and gave him a thumbs up, a human gesture the general had grown fond of. As the meeting concluded, Zaxthor found himself reflecting on the journey that had brought him here. From a warmongering general to a leader in a peaceful alliance, it was a transformation he could never have imagined. "Thinking deep thoughts?" Alex asked as they left the chamber. Zaxthor nodded. "I was just remembering our first meeting, how different things were then, and how different they are now," Alex added. "But the best is yet to come." As they walked to the observation deck, Zaxthor felt a surge of excitement. The future stretched out before them, full of possibilities. The galaxy was vast, and there was so much left to explore and discover. Standing before the huge window, Earth and the Zarkonian homeworld visible as distant points of light among the stars, Zaxthor felt a sense of peace he had never known in his years of war. "You were right, Alex," he said softly. "This is true strength. Not conquering, but building. Not fighting, but understanding." Alex nodded, looking out at the starscape. "And this is just the beginning. Imagine what we'll achieve in the next 5 years, or 50, or 500. As they stood there, a human and a Zarkonian, former enemies now the closest of friends, both felt the weight of the moment. They had changed the course of galactic history, turning a path of destruction into one of cooperation and growth. The stars seemed to shine brighter, as if approving of this new era. And somewhere out there, new adventures, new challenges, and new friendships waited to be discovered. Zaxthor smiled, his voice filled with determination and hope. "Well then, my friend, shall we go see what the universe has in store for us next?" Alex grinned back. "Lead the way, General. The future is waiting." And with that, they turned from the window, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, together.